Hello, everyone. Welcome back, or if you're new, welcome. So this is Ghost Church, and we are essentially trying to heal ourselves and heal the world around us, and we're not fucking around. Our goal is to build an underground insurgency of people who are hell-bent on healing themselves and healing the world around us. My name is Matthew. Rose the ranks in the tech industry, was an executive at Meta and Cameo, and then I also grew up really poor as like basically a farm boy, and have basically just been doing this where I kind of talk about whatever. And people seem to like it. So we've had a few community questions come in over the past months, and I'm finally kind of getting to them. Last week we talked about evidence for the biblical flood was a question, so that was interesting to dig into. So thanks for that question. There was a follow-up question from last week actually about radiometric dating because I guess I did a shit job of explaining that. And then also, I think I called the KPG barrier the K2 barrier or something, which I think is a mountain, one of my favorite mountains, which is annoying. But anyway, it used to be called the KT barrier, I'm pretty sure. Not a geologist, but I do love science, so I study physics and astrophysics and chemistry and stuff just for fun, and psychology and sociology and anthropology and things like that. Took a lot of those courses in university and then got my master's degree in theology actually. So I studied religion and then deconstructed and am basically just kind of doing this to help people who want to develop themselves and then also want to help others as well. So the community questions that we're tackling today are: how do you figure out your personal values, which I thought was a great question. I have struggled with that personally quite a bit over the course of my life. I think I struggle with it more than most people actually. Growing up, I had sort of a military-like father his father was military-ish and they were farmers, and so it was like this kind of like everything was a crisis and they were on the edge of catastrophe every day. Like if there was a storm that ruined the crops or if too many of their cattle died or anything like that, it was a disaster. So everything was like right down to the wire and every single piece of energy mattered, and you had to be ultra efficient and ultra intentional with everything that you did or destruction was waiting for you. And so my father kind of ran the family the same way, and because of that, because everything was very regimented and pretty constricting, I didn't do a good job of pushing back on that until later in life. And so therefore I have some identity diffusion stuff, which is one of my things that I struggle with, which is essentially kind of like not having a clear sense of who you are, what you value. So this is a question that resonated deeply with me. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about it and working on it in my own personal life. So we'll get into that in just a second, but great question. And then another person asked what my workout plan is. So I, after being successful in the tech industry, sort of transitioned to helping people become healthier. And the reason for that is because while I was very successful in the tech industry, I didn't feel my best and kind of got unhealthy, both mentally and physically. And I kind of realized that while I enjoyed the work, I wasn't really something that was helping me as a person in a wide variety of ways. I was kind of more lending my skills and time and energy and talent to help other people essentially make money. And I didn't really vibe with that. And instead, I wanted to help myself become healthier and then help other people become healthier. And so I have gotten a nutrition certification and do nutrition coaching with people. And I'm working on some personal training certifications as well as some medical certifications. So I'll probably go more of the functional medicine route over the next few years. So it's basically like a massive career reset or change for me that is more aligned with my values and personal goals. So I mentioned that because I thought it was interesting that this person asked about workout plan. I'm not like a pro workout planner, but I'll show you what I do and sort of the basic understanding that I have of it. And as I learn more, I'll get better at this too. So I just kind of research and study things out. So I have some thoughts on that. So I'll get into that as well. That one will be a little bit more technical. So let's do the values one first. Oh, another question that came in, which was very funny to me, was what products do you use? I wasn't exactly sure where to go with that, and I didn't really want to devote an entire Ghost Church session to that. So I'm just going to show products that I like that I use on a daily basis, maybe one per session or something like that. So anyway, this is the comb that I use to comb my beard. Is one of my favorite products that I use. I don't know if you can see that super well. It smells like wood. It smells amazing. But I try to essentially use very natural products because I had cancer when I was 18 and I had like 3 months to live or something like that. So I sort of, instead of going the traditional medical route, I ended up shifting to a healthier lifestyle as a way of combating the cancer, and it actually worked, and I didn't die, as you may have noticed. So basically, I changed my nutrition to a healthier, nutritious lifestyle, nourishing foods, and then swapped out a lot of the personal products that I use, like deodorants, shampoos, that kind of stuff. Essentially trying to reduce the toxic load in my life through different products. So that's why this comb is made out of very amazing wood. And so that extended to like clothes that I would buy and yeah, just like cleaning products, all kinds of different stuff. And then, yeah, the food thing too. So we can get into that if people want to know more about that. But that's a product that I super love. I don't remember where I got it. I got it a long time ago, but I use it every single day. So I highly recommend to try to avoid plastics in your life. Plastics have a way of leaching into their environment, and they're pretty toxic. So Tupperware, anything, a lot of combs are plastic, and so I got this nice wood one, and I've loved using it. Absolutely love it. So like cutting boards, we have wood cutting boards, we have glass, Tupperware, that kind of stuff. So anyway, okay, how do you figure out your personal values? So I use what's called the target method. I've tried so many different methods to do this, and there's books on this and all kinds of stuff. And I haven't really found any of the techniques helpful except for this one. So hopefully you find this helpful. It's definitely changed my life and how I think about these things. And I think it's because it's very technical and has a clear process and also doesn't allow people to kind of get away with BSing themselves on what they think. So that's why I like it. So basically what you want to do is like label what you perceive your values to be and then plot your behavior. So you're kind of checking with your perception of what your values are against your actual behaviors. And the reason for that, and I think we'll get into this a little bit later, the reason for that is because your subconscious will drive your behavior. Like 95% of your behavior is driven by your subconscious, not your conscious mind. And so if you pay attention to what you actually do and see it very realistically and clearly and accurately, then you can kind of derive through pattern recognition what your actual values are. Because your subconscious, where your values live, will drive your behavior, whether or not you want it to or not. And a lot of times our conscious mind is just kind of hallucinating justifications for these things. So someone might like help someone and they're actually doing it out of selfishness, and they're like, I'm a selfless person and I love helping people out of selflessness. But that's not actually the real value that they have. They want the hit of helping someone else because it makes them feel awesome or superior about themselves. So this method will sort of get at the heart of that and help you see yourself very clearly and accurately. So I'm going to go through some easy examples to kind of get our feet wet with this, and then we'll go a little bit more complex. So most companies, for example, will prioritize profit as their core value. So the goal usually with that is to make the cost of whatever they're producing, their product, go down, and the profitability or the margin go up. So you end up making things for cheaper and then making more money for the same amount of the same thing that you're selling. That happens all over the place. You see this in fast food restaurants. You see this in big box stores. You see this in clothing stores, like all over the place. Basically, people want to maximize profit. That's the main goal. And so they reduce cost and increase margin. Then you have a place like Amazon. Also, yeah. Then you have a place like Amazon. Their main goal in reality really is speed. If they didn't have such speed when ordering items, so if they didn't deliver same day, next day, that kind of thing, people wouldn't have used them. That's where they bet all of their money, was basically this kind of like immediacy. People want things now. People want things as quickly as possible, kind of thing. So they know people are essentially impatient, and so that's what they bet on. So their main goal is speed, and profit isn't actually their thing. In fact, some of the sales that they do on their website actually lose them money because profit really isn't their main thing. That's like a secondary value. Speed is their main thing, and that has worked out well for them. They've become very successful, but that's a them knowing who they are and what their goal actually is. Apple is a different beast as well. So they prioritize quality. There's a lot of fancy language about what they believe and challenging the status quo and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, they kind of just do what everyone else is doing. Like, computers existed before Apple came along. MP3 players came along before the iPod came along. Smartphones existed before the iPhone came along. They kind of just do the same exact thing that other companies do. They just raise the quality bar significantly. And that has worked out for them as well. It's the best fucking MP3 player out there. It's the best computer out there. It's from a certain perspective. And so that has led them to be a very successful company. But their goal is not profit. They're not trying to reduce cost. They're not trying to increase margin. In fact, the cost to produce, I remember especially when they started, the cost to produce a laptop from Apple was about the same price as what they sold it for. They made almost no money. And I think sometimes their budgets would balloon to the point where they wouldn't make any money, or they would lose money. So again, there are different ways of doing values. The key is to know what your actual true values are. Apple wouldn't be the company it is today if they were prioritizing profit, like most companies do, and neither would Amazon. So the point here is that you really want to figure out what your center target is and be really honest with yourself and just double down on that, because if you do that, you will inevitably be successful. People don't think that. A lot of times they get worried and they think that they have to get profit going or everything's going to go to shit. But it's clear that that is not the only path to success. I'm going to use another example here to kind of get our feet wet and get our heads around this concept of how to do this target valuing system. So I had a founder friend. Oh, let me move that a little bit. I had a founder friend, and he was a good salesman and was good at sort of convincing people to do things. The classic how to win friends and influence people stuff. He was good at that kind of stuff. But he wasn't very good about being accurate, having a solid self-perception about his own values and seeing himself accurately. So he believed that what he truly wanted to do was solve user problems, like identify a problem and solve it for the user. And then after doing that, then find product market fit with his startup, which is a very common thing. You have to have a fit between the product you're selling and the market you're selling it to. And when that happens, then you get lots of sales and you have this massive inflection point and you are a successful startup. So finding product market fit is something that every startup has to do and every business needs to do. And it's pretty hard to do. But he claimed that those were the two things that he really wanted to focus on. Having worked there for about a year, I can tell you that I very strongly do not think that those were his values. And I think he was essentially deluding himself and not seeing himself very accurately. So I think that this is my perception. This is speculative because I don't have access to his cerebellum or his brain in any way, direct access. So this is me kind of speculating and building a model as best I can based on the data I have. But I would guess based on his behavior, again, behavior is going to be a key thing in this target value system. His actual values were he wanted to be seen as successful. He didn't necessarily even, I don't think, want to be successful. I think he just wanted to be seen as successful. And then I also think another goal was he wanted to make pretty things. Now, these are totally fine values. No judgment on anybody's values. Your values can be whatever you want. The issue that I often have with people is when they think their values are one thing and they're actually something else. So he would claim in meetings and stuff that this first set of values was what he wanted and what his deep core values were. But after working with him for a year, I would say it's this second set. And the reason for that is because we would wake up every single morning and jump on a call, and the call would be like 3 hours long. And it was like we were taking the canvas that we had made yesterday and chucking it on the floor and starting with a fresh canvas. So his whole mentality was like, what pretty thing are we going to make today? Like, what are we going to make today? Was basically his sort of approach to building technology. And that's fine if you're like an artist and you're painting something. If you wake up in the morning and you're like, what should I paint today? That's great. Totally works in that situation. When you're building a startup or building a technology product, that does not work at all because it takes time to do engineering and do software development. These are fairly complicated technologies, and so building software products is challenging. And so everyone on the team was constantly like, wait, but I thought yesterday we were like building a Discord clone, and like today now we're building an Instagram clone, and then tomorrow we'll be doing some fitness app. Like, it was always constantly changing, almost on a daily basis, what he wanted to do. And if you're really interested in solving a user's problem, that's not how it works. You need to find a problem that you're passionate about and that users actually have, and get to know that problem very intimately, and then find a solution. And when you do that, then you find product market fit. And that works. But he was never really interested in interviewing users, talking to them, figuring out what their actual core problems were, building a fantastic solution to that. That wasn't really a part of the process. It was more like us just waking up and kind of like pontificating and thinking about what we think the world is like and what we think the problems of these users are and whatever. And it all felt very kind of performative. And he also wanted things to be really, really amazing and pretty. And I just strongly disagreed with that because history is littered with beautiful products that died because they didn't actually solve a problem. What you want is a problem that is a product that solves a problem first, and then you can make it pretty. It's sort of like making a very beautiful car, but the car engine doesn't actually work and it doesn't actually run. Like, that doesn't really do anybody any good. You need to be able to build a car that works first. It can drive, it can stop, it can do all those things. Then, once you have a functioning engine and a functioning chassis and car in general, like basic car, then you can put an amazing coat of paint on it. You can design the exterior to be incredible and all that stuff. But you need an engine and a functioning car first. So that's a good example of someone who's, like, in my opinion, completely divorced from reality and completely delusional about what their actual real goals and values are. So digging a little bit deeper into this, as I mentioned at the top of this, doing a behavior audit is a fantastic way. Oh, there we go. That looks better. Doing a behavior audit is a fantastic way to do this. So because your subconscious drives 95% of your behavior, what you want to do is track your behavior. I have an Apple Note when I was going through this process. And so if I would do something, I would just write down what I did. That's all that it is. You don't need to judge yourself. You don't need to be like, oh, that was a mistake, or that was dumb, or what does this mean, or any of that stuff. All you need to do is write down what your behavior was and track that over maybe the course of a month to 3 months or so. And then at that point, look at the behavior and try to identify a pattern. This is essentially like being a self-scientist. I had an amazing anthropology teacher in university named Michael West. She's very famous. And one of the most interesting things that he did in his anthropology class, which I think is common in anthropology classes, is to have people look at a culture called the Nasarima. And what you do is you look at this culture, you look at their practices, you look at what they do, and you study them for like weeks. And then at the end, the professor does this big reveal and is like, the Nasarima is actually America spelled backwards. And so the whole time you've been actually kind of doing anthropology and studying the American culture. And it's very interesting to look at a culture being kind of divorced from it, or having more, you can't get a fully objective perspective, but more objective than what we normally do. And that's essentially the same exact move that you need to make with yourself. When it's yourself, you bullshit yourself a lot. You want to protect your self-concept. You don't want to be seen as bad or negative or whatever. There's a lot of self-judgment that happens. You have an inner child. You have an attachment style. There's a whole bunch of shit going on. And again, your subconscious is doing shit. So what you want to do is kind of track your behavior and then try to identify a pattern in it, as though you're a self-scientist. Pretend you're looking at someone else. Like a friend or that kind of a thing, and see if you can identify a pattern. And then build this target circle, and we'll go through more of them, of values. And the reason I like the target circle rather than the list is because people really, I feel like, have a core central value, and then they have successive values that kind of go further out, but they're kind of less important. And so just like shooting arrows at a target, and hitting things, you can do different behaviors that hit different values, but maybe aren't hitting your core value. And people get actually really unhappy and really unhealthy when they're doing that. At least the friends that I've had are like that, and people I've read about are like that. And a lot of times people don't know why. They're kind of like, I should be happy in this situation, but I'm kind of not. And why am I not? And why am I still looking for something? Or why am I feeling restless? Or all these different things. And I think a lot of times it's because they thought that this other thing was the center of the target and they were hitting it, but that's not actually true. That thing that they value is actually more of an outer ring, and they have a different core. And so that's why this has been very valuable as a process for me to determine my values, because conceiving of it like that rather than a list, the danger with a list is like, oh, I'm hitting 1 and 3, so I should be good. But that's not really how it works. There are things that are ultra core important to a person, and then there's things that are important but not quite as corely important. And so I think the target identifies that relationship and makes that relationship more explicit to you. Okay. And then another thing to think about, or as part of this process, is to continue to, number 3. Once you've drawn out this target shape with your values, run it by people you trust and who are close to you, because oftentimes it's hard for us to see ourselves accurately, as I just mentioned, but other people have a tendency to be able to see us quite accurately. So once I determine my values, I'll run them by my wife and be like, does this seem like me, or am I missing the mark here? Is there something I'm not including? Is there something that I think is this but isn't actually there? Is this more aspirational, like I wish I was like this but aren't actually? Like, all of those things can happen, and the goal is to not bullshit yourself about it. So asking people close to you is a fantastic thing. It is scary and can be nerve-wracking because it can be challenging to your own self-concept, but be brave and look things square in the eye and value seeing reality and seeing yourself accurately. And you can do it. And then number 4 is to continue to return to this, because as you live life, a few things happen. Your self-perception and self-awareness might increase. So you might be able, even though you're trying to see yourself accurately and you're checking it with other people, there still might be some bullshit in there. So as you go through life, you might, and you kind of think about these values and incorporate them into your daily life, you might realize, oh, I wasn't quite as accurate as I thought I was, and I don't actually think it's this. I think maybe this is the core and not this one. So you can keep kind of massaging it as you get more data and as you process it and think about it a little bit more. So that's the first thing. The second thing is people grow and change as time goes on. So what you value in your 20s might not be what you're going to value in your 40s. So allow yourself to grow and evolve as a human being. And that's why modifying these lists and checking in on them on a yearly basis is a really, really good idea, because then you can track how your values are changing over time, and they will change over time. So those are the steps. Basically, be aware that your subconscious is driving your behavior, and your values are in there. They're baked into your subconscious, and that's what's kind of driving a lot of your behavior. And the goal is to unearth that, excavate that, and bring it into your conscious awareness. So in order to do that, track your behavior, just record it, no editorializing or no judgment, drawing any kind of judgments on it. And do that for like a month to 3 months or so, and then look for a pattern. Be a self-scientist. Try to figure out, based on these behaviors, like my friend who was the tech founder who I worked with, if he would have done this and been able to see the, like, every day he's kind of like, oh, let's do this other new thing. And then tomorrow be like, oh, let's do this other new thing. I just don't think he was aware that that's what he was doing. And we kind of tried to help him in various ways, but I probably could have been a little bit more hardcore and pushed on him pushed back on him a little bit more in order to help him. But I think this exercise would have really helped him see himself accurately. And then the third thing is cross-check it with the people around you and the closest to you. And then the fourth thing is allow it to grow and evolve. So check in on them every year, and expect them to shift every 3 to 5 years as you grow and evolve as a person. Okay, now we're going to go through a few more examples, or we're going to go through mine. So this is my current one that I have identified. Can you see that? Okay, yes. Good, perfect. Okay, so I used to think that I don't think I had reality even on here. But as I have gotten older, I have realized that if someone is bullshitting me or bullshitting themselves, or if I say something and they hear something else, or if they claim something that I don't think is true, or if they claim something and to have zero supporting evidence for that thing that they're claiming, or if they sort of fundamentally see the world as in a fantasy-like way, I get really uncomfortable. I have kind of this like very allergic reaction to people who are living in a fantasy world. Even a fantasy about themselves, a fantasy about the relationship, a fantasy about me, a fantasy about their life, a fantasy about their goals, a fantasy about who they are and their own values. Like if they're disconnected from reality in any way, I get really uncomfortable. And not everybody is like that. Trump, for example, has no problem being disconnected from reality. He's totally cool with it. Doesn't give it a second thought. And so different people have different values. But for me, I have come to realize that a actual connection with reality and not a disconnection from reality is one of my core values. I didn't know that for a large portion of my life, but it explains so much of my behavior. The second thing moving out from that is helping people. I think this is what I thought was my core value. I don't know what it is about me, but I just love if I see someone and there's some way that I could bring value to their life, I just love to do that. I don't know why. It's kind of how I've always been built. My parents would tell me that when I was born, I would naturally want to share my toys with other kids when they would come over, which is different than I guess how most people are when they're kids. So that's cool. It's just like kind of a fundamental part of my personality. There's maybe some things that we can get into and figure that out, but because it happened when I was like pre-verbal and at such a young age, when I was like 1, 2, 3 years old, I think it seems potentially baked into my sort of DNA or my cells as opposed to a learned behavior from my environment, but who's to say? All that to say, that's my second value. And then the third value I'll talk about a little bit more in depth, but consistency is another value that I have, which is like to get 1% better each week. So whatever I'm doing, if I'm working out or I'm cooking a meal, a particular recipe of a meal, or I'm designing something, or I'm building an app, or whatever it is that I'm doing, my goal is to make it 1% better every single week. And that consistency, like not missing a week, basically, having a weekly streak of consistency for different things. And that consistency streak is tied to making it 1% better each week. Like my body, for example. If I'm working on hip mobility, then my hip mobility needs to be getting better each week, 1% better each week. That kind of a thing. Solving problems is another value of mine. I use this mental trick for myself a lot. When I was a kid, I would get toys, and one of my favorite toys was a transformer that I got when I was like, I don't know, 4 or something, 4 or 5. And I think we were on a family vacation and I got it, and I broke it open and then just like figured it out, how to transform it from a fighter jet back into a transformer and do all the different things. And I didn't read the instructions, and my parents love to tell that story. But I've noticed myself, like, I don't think I ever read the instructions on anything, new software, whatever it is. I just kind of figure it out, and I love doing that. And I even, when I'm trying to solve a problem, will sometimes think of it like a transformer that I need to figure out. And I think it's one of the reasons why I like sexuality as well, because like new sexual partners, you're kind of like figuring them out. What do they like? What do they not like? and it's like kind of a complex problem to solve, and I kind of love that. And then the last one is like adventure or fun. There's been phases of my life where this hasn't been a value, but now that I'm 42, I just feel like there's still like a kid in me. I'm not like immature all the time, and I do lots of complicated things with my life and things like that, and hardcore things, and I don't have a lot of fear and do political things and like whatever. But there's still a part of me that like just gets so excited for different things. Like we were just at an observatory in Flagstaff, and like seeing the telescopes and seeing all the different photos of nebula and the stars and things. Just I get so excited about that stuff, and just nerd out about it and geek out about it. And so yeah, if there's like if pretty much anything that I do, I try to add some level of adventure or fun to it. From working out to what I'm building to how I run my companies to how I do my relationships, like all that stuff. So that's sort of an example of what my target looks like. And then this is an example of what it used to look like. And I felt like I was kind of BSing myself, but didn't know it basically. So I thought that helping people was the center and perfection was the goal. Like I'm sort of naturally talented, which everyone would fucking hate in elementary school, but didn't choose it. Didn't have it. Wasn't in the womb and checked off the checkbox of being talented. Just a thing that happened, basically. But that actually bit me in the ass because I would try something and become pretty proficient at it in a pretty fast amount of time because I was talented. And so then I would kind of either get bored or I would be like, oh, I kind of conquered that or I figured that out. So then I just kind of wouldn't go back to it. And that was kind of like, that led to kind of a perfectionistic mentality where if I couldn't grasp something and become pretty good at it pretty fast, I kind of wouldn't even try or wouldn't even want to try. But the people who are really successful and happy in life, I think, find something that they deeply want to do. It's not about being a perfectionist or getting it to a certain level or, getting to a level quickly or anything like that. It's just like they have a genuine love for the thing. And that's why they do it. And so that's why I basically shifted from this perfection and becoming outstanding fast thing to this consistency thing. I basically learned that it doesn't need to be perfect now. It just needs to get better every week, basically. And so like a good example of that is like I went to a boxing class today. I'm pretty new to boxing and combat and fighting and that kind of thing. I did do combat and jiu-jitsu in college. And then I also did some one-on-one combat stuff growing up. So when I was in middle school, high school, that kind of thing, and then I did it more formally in college. But since then, it's been, 20 years since that. And so I'm getting back into combat now. And what I would normally do is watch a YouTube video about the stances and the positions for boxing, and like I would practice them so that way when I went to my first beginner class, I would like destroy everyone and how to wrap your hands and like all the different advantages and things. And also would want to be like the best person in the class, right? So the coach is like, holy shit, this guy's like a natural. But really what it is like hard work behind the scenes because I just want to be amazing at things. And I put in insane work. And if I can't grasp it and get there like relatively quickly, then I get frustrated often, which is super unhealthy and not a good way to approach life. And like I consciously have to like go to the class and be like, I'm going to punch slower than other people. And I'm going to like actually like focus on getting better each week instead of like doing it perfect every time. And that has really reduced my stress level. It's also, I think, a way healthier and way more sustainable and way more. It's a value, a personal value that I have that I think sets me up for success way better than I'm going to make this amazing thing and blow everyone's mind. So now instead of doing that perfectionism thing, I do this consistency thing. So it's basically switching out perfectionism as a value for consistency as a value. And then another thing too is I would make a lot of decisions because I wanted to be safe or secure. I think this drives a lot of people's decision making, but for me, because I grew up super poor as like a farm boy, I had this kind of like fear that everything would go to shit constantly. I would lose everything or whatever. And so I would make a lot of decisions based on what would keep me the safest and most secure. So taking jobs, not wanting to fuck up or push back much because I wanted to be secure in the job, that kind of thing. So, and even like I did design for a lot of years. I don't super love design, but I did it for 15 years. And the main reason is because people really wanted to pay me for it because I'm talented and good at it. But that decision to keep doing it, even though I didn't really like it, was because I wanted the safety and security of having a regular paycheck and, not, basically being risk averse there. So that while that wasn't a value that I wanted, it was a value I actually had. And if I looked at my behavior, that was a value that I feel like emerged. And I've worked essentially to change that. Solving problems has always been a thing, and I've kind of always been aware of that. That's why I used to have that. And then community used to be a thing, but I actually think helping people is a better framing of that. So that kind of evolved into helping people. I would be like, I love building community, but what I think I actually like is like helping people. It can definitely happen in community for sure, and I do love community, but it wasn't like I just loved hanging out with everyone. I kind of like loved hanging out with everyone and like hearing about their life, and if there was anything I could contribute to them or their life, that would be the thing that I really liked. So I got clearer and crisper on what my personal value for community was. It was actually helping people, and I also kind of reordered these based on my behavior. So again, the process is to do this, draw this out, track your behavior, see if it matches up, check with another person and see if it works, and then continue to think about it and update these lists over time. And then the second thing that I usually do with these target is once you feel good about this layout and kind of how you have this, like what's your core value and then what's the next one out, like a target, then plot the activities that you're currently doing and see how well they match up. So this is my current focus of what I'm doing a lot in my life. So Fit Nerds is a company that I own, and we do nutrition coaching and health coaching in a variety of different ways for essentially high performers. So people who are out there making an impact in the world, we help them stay as healthy as possible, and it's been really, really fun. And one of the things I like about it is it's a shift from studying theology and kind of being a pastor, because I felt like a lot of times people were like trying to help people like spiritually or like all these, and had kind of like bullshit answers for things. But one thing that's nice about doing the health coaching is that it's very evidence-based and science-based. So I think it's very based in reality. And so I'm hitting that company that I'm doing hits the reality piece, because there's a ton of science involved, and I have to constantly be reading materials and stay up to date with all the research. And reading research papers has been incredibly fun. And I'm also helping people, and I also can get better at coaching every single week. It's also solving problems because a lot of clients have various problems. My wife has rheumatoid arthritis. One of my clients is trying to lose some fat, like while she's nursing, which is pretty challenging. Another one has like some body stuff that is very challenging for him. And so figuring out how to approach that in that way. Some people have injuries. Like there's a bunch of different problems that you have to solve. Every person is unique. Everybody's body is unique. And then there's a component of fun to it. So the way that I coach tries to keep it as fun as possible for people. I have a variety of methods that I use to do that. But I want my clients to come away from our sessions like smiling, feeling good, feeling supported. And so that has an element of fun to it. I do like little cartoons and give them content and try to make it as fun as possible. I record videos for them and make it fun. So I feel like that's a thing that if I would have plotted this earlier in life, it would have been a little bit all over the place, or I wouldn't have really understood what was going on. But now that what this does is it helps me make sure that what I'm spending my time doing is actually aligning with my values. I'm also developing an app with a really good friend of mine. We kind of co-founded a new company to make this app app happen, and it's been incredibly fun and exciting and exhilarating because we have some early users and they've been very positive about it and are kind of helping us build it, which I love doing that kind of thing. But what's nice about it is we found a problem that people actually have and are really focused on the reality of that, not a problem we think they have or anything like that, which a lot of startups do, but an actual real problem that they have that they don't have a great solution for. And then it also is helping people, and we're also making the app better consistently 1% each week, and it's also solving problems, and it's also fun. So it's the tagline that we have is, I can't say the whole thing, but it's the world Earth's happiest something something something. And I'll reveal what this app is once we have a critical mass of users. So maybe in a few months I'll say more about it. But anyway, I feel like that's another thing that's hitting like dead bullseye, hitting all the things. Ghost Church is another thing, as I've mentioned, and especially last week with the question that came in last week. I am trying to give you guys the best research and science that I know of, as close to reality as possible. I also feel like this is helping people. You guys have been asking questions. People have mentioned how much they like it and how it's helped them rethink certain things. I'm trying to make this 1% better each week. It's solving actual problems. We talked a lot about like actual real world problems a few sessions ago and how to build a better world. So that was a key part of that. And even like determining your own value, personal values, is, I think, solving a problem. I haven't really gone to the fun thing. And while some sessions have solved problems, I don't think all of them do. All of the sessions do. I think some of these sessions have mainly kind of been me just ranting or getting things off my chest or whatever. Things that I'm interested in, whatever. So I don't see it as quite hitting the solving problems or adventure or fun thing. So I think this could probably be moved out a little bit, and there could be some improvements, but that's kind of where that's at. I'm doing trail running, fighting, climbing, calisthenics, and then play, and I have a variety of different ways that I play, which has been really fun. And that doesn't really do some of these values. Like, I don't think that really helps people. It helps me, and I don't know if that's super like based in reality necessarily. So that's why I plotted it here. I'm also learning Spanish, and that's kind of more for fun. Like, it's kind of for work a little bit, but yeah. So anyway, plot your activities on here and see kind of where they land. It's okay to have things that are just for adventure or fun, or just adventure, fun, and solving problems, or whatever it is. But yeah, this should help you. And you can also shift these in. Like, I could maybe figure out a way to incorporate helping people with this if I really wanted to. So anyway, that's why plotting them is helpful, is because then you can kind of align your life and how you're spending your energy. Another example here that I wanted to mention, where the behavior audit and an asking the people closest to you thing can really come in. I wanted to do, this is an example of, you can see the evolution of what I thought and then how I'm kind of thinking about how I'm spending my time and energy with these values. This is an example of not doing it well. So like, my father's, I feel like, self-perception is pretty delusional, basically. So he kind of has this like very evangelical perception of the world. And so he feels like he's kind of like championing God's will and like doing, like raising his sons the way that they should be raised, and like all these different things. These kind of values that he was handed by the Catholic Church or by evangelicalism or like whatever it is. And ultimately those values get translated as, this is like the will of God or whatever. And so I think his core value is he wants to like do the right thing, essentially. Like, that's what champion God's will is. Like, God has this kind of like plan, or like how you should behave, this kind of rule set or whatever. And his job is to like follow that, not only follow it, but like champion it, like get it out there, make sure that other people know what it is, make sure other people know how they're falling short, like whatever. That's like the goal. That's what he would say. And then another value would be like righteousness, which kind of plays into the same kind of idea. And then like he really has this kind of draw toward nature as a teacher. This isn't as thorough as it could be. I didn't want to spend too much time on this one, but that gives you a rough picture of him. He loves like forests and rocks and things like that. But if he were to ask me what I think of his target, this is what I would guess that he would probably draw for himself. If he were to ask me what I would think of it, I would say his core value is control. I think that he grew up in a family that was, he essentially had no control. And so I think and that was like pretty abusive basically. And so I think that he really uses the control of his environment to feel safe. And that manifests in a ton of different ways. And again, no judgment on any of these values. The issue I have is the lack of self-awareness for him to know that that's actually his core value. Like Steve Jobs was kind of the same way. Like he really needed control in order to feel safe as a human being. And moving out from that, safety or security. And then I think instead of nature as a teacher, like we should learn all this highfalutin stuff from nature. I think at the end of the day, he just enjoys nature. I think that's really what it is. And so I think the goal is to like take this self-perception and then actually figure out what the real stuff is. And then, so that's pretty much the exercise plan that I go through. The method is basically like labeling your values and then plotting your behaviors, which we went through. And then a behavior audit is also really helpful for determining this too. So realizing that your subconscious is really driving and track your behavior, record it, and identify patterns. And then ask people closest to you to verify it, and then modify the list regularly. I personally look at my list about every year or so, and I have seen shifts. I only started doing this process maybe like 5 years ago, I want to say now. And it's been really helpful. Maybe 6 or 7 years now. But I would say there's at least some change every single year. And I would say a pretty dramatic shift can happen every like 3 to 5 years. Meaning like one of your super important ones will drop off or will shift, or you'll have some insight and realize it was actually something else. This perfectionism to consistency switch that I made was a very intentional, sort of brutal switch that took a lot of time to do. But now I feel really good about it, and I don't feel this like intense drive to like be the best in the boxing class or whatever. If I am not as good or whatever, that's perfectly fine with me now, as long as I'm getting better every week. That's the main thing. So moving on to the second question, what's my workout plan? The first thing I want to say about this is that you really, really need to define your real goal. So sort of similar to the process that we just went through with values. Some people are like, I want to lose weight. But the question is like, why do you want to lose weight? Some people will like want to go to the pool and look great in a swimsuit. Some people want to like get a date. Some people like whatever the real actual goal is. Some people want to be healthy. Some people want to live as long as they can. Some people want to be able to pick up their kids and play football in the backyard with their kids. Like, it really depends on you and your life. And what you want to do before you build a workout plan is to get really fucking clear about what your real goal is. Losing weight is almost never the goal. Losing weight is a step towards some other goal. And so you need to be really clear about what your actual real goals are. And then secondly, you want to categorize your goal, because you can't, from a workout perspective, move toward all of these goals at the same, or all of these categories at the same time. Oh, let me shrink that so you can see the last one. How's that? Okay, so nice. Okay. So your body is complicated, extremely complex, and how your metabolism works is complex, and how your body builds muscles and responds to force in different ways and tissues. We've talked about force before at Ghost Church. It's very complex and complicated. There's a lot of thousands of chemical reactions happening to make this happen. So there are 3 primary categories you can drive toward. You can drive toward aesthetics with a workout. This is like the kind of Marvel superhero kind of look. And they look great shirtless or in a suit or something like that on film. But if you ask them to like actually, hoist themselves up over the edge of a building or something, or actually be able to like fight someone or anything like that, they kind of can't do it because they can't hardly lift anything, to be honest with you, because they're not really very strong. Their muscles are just big. And they're working out for that kind of physique look. And that look does not equate to actual strength. It's a completely different way of working out. So if you want to look amazing because you want to be a model or you want to have an OnlyFans or like whatever it is, that's an aesthetic goal. If you want to actually be strong, like be able to climb up the sides of buildings and like fight someone in the street or defend yourself or like whatever it is, that's a functional strength goal. You're actually functionally strong. You don't look as cut and amazing in photos or anything like that, but you can actually throw a punch. I watched a crazy video on Reddit the other day where a guy was sitting, there was like a big mall, and there was a big open space in the mall, so you could look up through all the different levels of the mall. And on one of the levels, the guy was sitting on the railing, and he fell back. He accidentally slipped and fell backward. He was hanging there, and he didn't have the body strength to hoist himself up and pull himself back up over the bar. And people were like rushing to try to get him, and he was hanging there, and his arms just basically got tired, and he fell and died immediately, smacked the ground and died immediately. So that's an example of functional strength. The ability to like hang there for an extended time until help comes, or be able to hoist yourself back up over the bar if you get into a rough spot, or if you get into a dangerous situation and need to defend yourself or something like that. That's functional strength. Rock climbing is another good example of functional strength. Very different workout plan than aesthetics. Longevity is really about nourishing and preserving your body for as long as possible, being able to go upstairs for as long as possible, being able to lift your kids, grab your kids out of the car, play with them, play football in the backyard, like not have disease prevention, all that stuff is a longevity piece. The reason it's not the same as functional strength is because building functional strength can decrease certain things. Like if you're building functional strength and able to like do parkour or like defend yourself physically, you're kind of wearing your joints out to the point where you might hit a point later on where you can't raise your arm up in the right way, or you can't play basketball in like with your kids or something like that because your joints don't work as well because you've used them so hard. So that's why these things are all kind of different. And aesthetics is definitely not in any way geared for longevity. So once you have your actual goal and define your real goal, and this takes some time to do, take a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks to kind of really figure this out, then what you need to do is categorize it. And then what you need to do is look up exercises that help you achieve that thing. And there's workouts all over the place. So you can either find or pay for a program that fits your goals. If it were me, personal training is expensive, as I'm sure many of you know. So you're paying per session, and you have to do 2 to 3 sessions a week or something like that if you really want to make good progress. That can get really pricey really fast. However, most trainers or coaches will program for you if you pay them. So they might do it by the month, or they might give you like a 6-month program or something like that, and you pay them a much lower fee. So it might be like, I don't know, I'm just throwing these numbers out there, but it might be like $100 for a 4-month program or something like that. And what they'll do is they'll take your goal and take all the knowledge that they have about kinesiology and how your body works and how exercises and workout plans should be built to keep you not injuring yourself. And they will build a custom plan for you. I would highly recommend doing that. That is by far the best thing you can do, because these programs that are in Men's Health or online or whatever it is from internet celebrities or whatever, or influencers, are just a one-size-fits-all often bullshit program that actually won't help you reach your goals. So finding someone who can listen to you, understand what your goals are and what your body is doing and all that stuff is much, 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 much better and well worth the expense. So that's what I would do. I'm going to show you now what my workout and goals are, just because you asked. This is not something you should just emulate, though, because my goals are not your goals. Let me zoom in on this. to see if that can work. Okay. Hopefully you can see this okay. So my goals, I'm like maybe halfway through this program now, but just to give you a sense of how I think about it, I did I did essentially 4 weeks of foundation work. So a little bit of backstory before I dig into this actually. So I got decently unhealthy in the tech industry, was focused on maximizing user engagement and maximizing revenue and all that kind of good stuff that happens when you're at a tech startup. And I worked for Meta as well, and the metrics there were bananas. And we'd ship something, and billions of people would suddenly be using it. So we were shipping to billions of people, which meant it had to be bulletproof, pretty much. So anyway, crazy stuff. But I wasn't focused on my body at all, so I got pretty physically unhealthy, lost some strength, gained some fat. Wasn't mentally in a super great spot either. And so I decided that I needed to make a change. So I got a personal trainer and did strength training 3 times a week and built a really great foundation. Lost 40 pounds of fat, and that was I would say 95% of that was nutrition changes. So I learned how nutrition worked, what I needed to fuel my body, how the science of nutrition worked, and that was a big part of it. I would say that's, if I had to pick one thing for people to do, I would say that piece of it, rather than the workout piece of it. So nutrition is huge. So that's how I lost the fat. Working out is really for growing muscles. It's not really for losing fat. Even people think like cardio, they need to be huffing and puffing cardio on the treadmill in order to melt their fat away, but that is not the case. You do strength training or resistance training or endurance training to grow muscles or build endurance or something like that. You do nutrition to lose fat. So that, I just want to mention that. This workout plan isn't really for fat. The goals of this work. So anyway, so then I was training and sort of basically extended my neck too far while I was pressing hard. I was training to failure and trying to maximize my hypertrophy, and I basically like extended my neck too far and was pushing too hard, trying to extend my spine and put space between my vertebrae, and I accidentally dissected an artery in my neck that caused a very small leak of blood into my brain and gave me essentially a stroke. So it was a very minor stroke. I was only in the hospital for a few days, but I couldn't read or do anything for like a day or so. And then on day 2, I could read again and my vision had kind of cleared up, and I never lost the ability to speak or understand language or anything like that. So that was good. But like basically my vision was just off. Like one eye it looked like I was just kind of double seeing everything because your eyes are not perfectly aligned, and so your brain takes the input from both of your eyes and matches that image together into one unified image. And that part of my brain had become damaged from the blood that was leaking around in there, and so it wasn't able to put those pictures together the right way, like usual. Anyway, all that to say, it's been like about 9 months now, so I wanted to take a break from hard training to let my body heal. And now that I'm back to healed, I have been starting to get back into heavy training. And so this plan is me essentially getting back into it. And so that's why it says foundation here. So the goals are to restore my solid strength foundation, to kickstart my endurance, to establish mobility consistency, so joint work, to master the form, and quality of movement is priority. So when I was getting back into it, I wanted to kind of retrain my brain on what the actual movements are. And because lack of form was part of what led to my stroke, I wanted to get really clear on what the good forms were so that didn't happen again. And then I wanted to start building my body for fighting and climbing. So the way that this works is Monday I have a full strength day. Tuesday is mobility and kind of recovery. It's like technically called active recovery. Wednesday is resistance again, so full body strength again. Thursday is mobility again, and then Friday is strength again. And then Saturday I do some active recovery stuff, and then it's Sunday, full day, I do absolutely nothing and let my body recover. So I try to sleep as much, try to have as nourishing of foods as I can on Sundays. It's like my full sort of recharge rest day. So I won't get into the actual specifics of this, but you can see here that there's a wide variety of them. Like the dead hangs are setting me up for success in climbing later on, where there's a lot of hanging there. And the cars are the mobility stuff that help your joints. So if you're going to eventually do like squats or any kind of complex movement, like take a squat, for example, your ankle is moving, your knee is moving, your hip is moving and carrying up huge loads. So if your white tissue at any of those joints is in any way compromised or not as strong as the red tissue, your big muscles are, then you'll injure yourself. So you want to make sure that you have your what's called joint jacked as well. So your white tissue is strong also. So your ankle needs to be strong, your knee needs to be strong, your hip needs to be strong, the actual joint itself. So cars and mobility work are how you do that. And so that's basically the kind of first phase. And the second phase, I had different goals. So starting to grow the muscles, the red tissue, focusing on explosiveness for combat, and then reinforcing my joints for combat. Your joints take a pretty big beating. And then I'm dropping the rep ranges slightly, but increasing the overall load. So this is how you kind of maximize hypertrophy. So I'm not doing as many reps, but I'm pushing around more resistance and weight. And then phase 3 is advanced power. So more advanced combat skills, more complex movements, increased explosive power, agility, and endurance. A lot of combat and climbing has to do with endurance. If you get too tired, you'll fall or you'll lose the fight. So that's a big part of it. And then fine tuning the functional skills as well. And the reason this is in orange, in case you're curious, is because it's what's called a circuit. Some people call it a superset, but this is basically a circuit. So it's 3 minutes on, 1 minute rest, and I go through this whole thing 3 times. So it's like just a little mini workout within the larger workout, essentially. So that's essentially how I've structured my current workout plan. Once I hit these goals, and I feel like I have, I'm doing well in all of the areas that I want to be doing well, and I'm happy with my output. Then I'll create a different goal set, and I'll build a different workout for that goal set. So it was a lot to figure out, and that's why I say just finding someone and paying them $100 or whatever they charge you to do a plan, and then coming back to them once you've done that plan and getting another one, and being continually checking in with yourself about what your goals are. That would be my strong recommendation. Let an expert do it. Not doing that is kind of like taking your car to a friend and being like, "Hey, can you fix this?" And the friend is like an insurance salesman or something. Like that's what getting a program on the internet is basically like. Like it's like trying to diagnose your car's problem via just Googling around on the internet or something. Much better to take your car to an actual really great mechanic. That's what you actually want to do. Rather than Googling around and trying to fix it yourself. Some people may be able to do that. I have an uncle who can do that kind of shit, but most people can't. So I would instead just find a really high quality mechanic and get them to fix your car. And that's the same as finding a high quality trainer and getting them to write some programming for you. One of the core things that you want to make sure you are doing, and one of the reasons why this is important to get right, is because if you don't add exercises that kind of balance out the muscles you're working, you can really deform your body and you can kind of like cripple yourself essentially and have lots of diseases or downsides later in life. So if you're constantly just working out your like abs or chest, but don't work out your back, for example, you'll start to be really hunched over. So that's why a lot of times trainers will program in the ways that they will is to keep your body balanced and make sure that if you're working on one muscle group, you're working on an opposing muscle group. So that way your bones don't get deformed. So there's things like that to pay attention to. So that's pretty much it for this week. I hope that answers your questions. Whoever asked those questions, if I didn't answer your question well enough and you want more, just let me know. I'm happy to go more in depth. I should have pulled this up earlier. Fit. If you go to fitnerds.club, which is my website, and you click on Ghost Church, then toward the bottom of the page there is an ask a question box, so you can type your question in there and hit submit. And I'm happy to. This is going to be the last community questions stream until we get more questions. I think I've covered there so far. There over the last 2 months, there have been 3 main questions, and I think I've answered them all. I think, and then we had one more question come in last week when I was doing the answering community questions about radiometric dating, because I don't think I explained that very well. So I'll probably do a session sometime in the next couple months of answering community questions again, and I'm going to do a deep dive in radiometric dating and how it works. And if you have anything else that you want me to tackle, let me know. And probably like a month to 2 months from now, I will answer your question. So just hang in there, and I will get to it. But that's basically how you ask a question. Again, fitnerds.club, Ghost Church, there's a link, and then if you scroll down, there's an ask a question box. So you can, I get those, I get an email and can see your question. So let me know if you have any other thoughts, or if I didn't explain something well here, just let me know and I can cover it in the future. I'm also happy to email back too, if you just have some random thoughts or whatever. So that's pretty much it. I hope you had a good time. I will see you next week. Bye.